say better. You say buses. Better.
Buses.
Better.
Buses.
Very nice standing, everybody.
How are you? Oh, thank you.
It is all you, Stephanie. Good.
All right.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Moy. I am 21 years old, and I'm a senior at Hunter College, and I'm from Woodhaven, Queens. I also happen to be a seasoned bus rider, and I've been taking buses since I was a middle school student. But buses have been late for as long as I can remember. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my life. I'm majoring in environmental studies and urban studies at Hunter College. And I also teach classes to earn extra school credit. And I wake up at 6:30 in the morning to catch the QM15 bus at 7:30 a.m. 7:30 a.m. if I'm lucky. But usually the bus arrives at 8 a.m. or 8:10. And all in all, I have to give myself a little over 2 hours to commute to my classes at Hunter College. And if I'm lucky, I arrive by 9 a.m. and I'm on time. But sometimes that doesn't always happen, and I'm at my desk late, and I can even get there at 9:20. And you would think that my professors would be angry with me for regularly being late, but it's the norm, and many of my classmates also take the bus, and they're also late. It gets particularly bad when we reach Manhattan, and there are cars and delivery trucks blocking intersections and the bus lanes. And if I could, I would take the M103 to school because it would drop me off right in front of Hunter College. But to be completely honest, I would take more buses over trains if they ran more efficiently. However, that's really not the case. And this isn't just a Manhattan issue. It's a citywide issue. The buses creep along in Queens as well. I'm really excited to graduate next month. I'm a New York kid. And soon, if I'm lucky, I'll be a young professional New Yorker with my first full-time job here. But during my time at Hunter, I've turned down job and volunteer opportunities because I would have to take more than 2 buses to get there, and it's deserted in Queens to take the buses. So getting to work or school on time shouldn't be a matter of luck. It should be driven by smart urban planning that's responsive to a growing and dynamic city. And we also need to find more creative ways to cut our emissions here. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for thinking big, and you're taking the steps we need to fight climate change by getting people out of their cars, and you're making bold decisions today that will get me to my future job on time. So, thank you, and please join me in welcoming Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Well done. Thank you. Stephanie, thank you so much. I want to tell you, I can immediately predict you're going to have a lot of success in whatever field you choose. You're very, very well spoken, and I was struck immediately by how you jump here in front of a press conference effortlessly. So you're on your way, and we want to make sure you're on your way in the meantime to school and getting to school on time. And the whole idea of this plan is for Stephanie and so many other students, for folks getting to work, for parents trying to get their kids to school or getting to pick up their kids after school, to change life in the city so that constant sense of unpredictability changes. What Stephanie just talked about is what I hear from people all over the city, certainly about our buses, certainly about our subways. You can't depend on them. Now, we have to make a lot of changes to fix that. We can't be the greatest city in the world and not be able to get around or not be able to depend on the buses and the subways that we need. So what Stephanie's talking about is an example. The way people have made all the adaptations in their life to assume things will be late. And we want to do something to change that once and for all. And Stephanie, I just want to thank you. I know you've been involved previously as an activist fighting for these changes. So everyone, let's give Stephanie a round of applause and thank her. And we're here at a great New York City institution, the 92nd Street Y, beloved in this city. And we're here because right on Lexington Avenue, I was out there with a number of you before, is one of the places where you're going to see change happening. If you look at Lexington Avenue the way it is now, the buses crawl along too often. It just doesn't work the way things are configured now. And all those delays that Stephanie talked about are partly because we don't have some of the right design and we don't have some of the right approaches. We know we can do better. So we are rolling out, starting today, projects that are going to help hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers get where they need to go quicker. And we're going to do it very, very quickly. We know that people's lives get disrupted all the time, and it shouldn't be that way. So we're not going to do this slowly. We're going to start immediately now in 2019, and we're going to reach our goals by next year, 2020, because we want to see for 600,000 New Yorkers a faster commute, whether it's to work, to school, wherever they're going. We want it to go faster. I want to thank everyone who worked on this plan. This is a very important new development for 600,000 people, the Better Buses Action Plan. And when we put out one of these plans, I want you to know that there's many, many people who put a whole lot of work into its fruition. These things don't grow on trees. People have to do a lot of work in the administration to figure out all of the details, all of the things that have to come together technologically and otherwise to make it work. Special thanks to all our colleagues at the Department of Transportation. And I know it's a labor of love for all of you to make these kind of changes, and I appreciate your hard work. To members of the administration who helped lead the way, I want to thank our Chief Climate Policy Advisor and the Director of our One NYC initiative, which you're about to see the extraordinary report, the extraordinary One NYC report coming out next week. Dan Zarilli, thank you for your great work. And on behalf of DOT, Deputy Commissioner for Transportation Planning and Management, Eric Beaton, thank you, and thank you for being a very good tour guide earlier. Of course, you're going to hear from our Deputy Mayor, Laura Anglin, in just a moment as well. To the folks sitting behind me, all of you, the advocates from a number of organizations, I see Riders Alliances here and the Strap Hangers Campaign and NYPIRG, everyone who fights for these changes, your voices make a big difference. We hear your voices. We get inspired by them. A lot of times the ideas and the innovations come from grassroots organizers showing us other and better ways of doing things. So I have a request to all the activists and organizers. Would you please look at your neighbor and give them a round of applause, please? Now, if you're going to talk about how New Yorkers get around, you got to, of course, talk about subways and buses. And we took a major step forward for both with the congestion pricing plan. And I want to say, a lot of times, problems and bad news gets all the attention. I hope we're going to spend a lot of time in the coming weeks and months talking about something that actually was a victory for all New Yorkers, that a congestion pricing plan did get passed in Albany just in time. And it's going to open up a whole series of positive options for us going forward. And I want to thank the governor. I want to thank the legislature for acting on this plan, because that's the first step of what we need. But as you're going to see in this proposal today and this plan and all of the One NYC vision, we have much more to do. And the Better Buses Action Plan is something that we can do to address the fact that New Yorkers have some of the longest bus commutes in the whole country. It does not need to be that way. We can do things differently. We can do things better. And the commitment we made, and it's not a small one. A lot of times I say to members of my team, we're going to make very big commitments, and we're going to put them on tight timelines, and it's going to inspire everyone to be their best selves and to achieve the most they can. I said this in the State of the City. We will speed up bus rides for 600,000 New Yorkers by 25% by next year. So it's a very aggressive goal. Shave a quarter of the time off of people's commute by next year for 600,000 people. And this is going to involve over 20 projects all over the city. It will involve new bus lanes in some cases. It will involve green light priority for buses at 300 key intersections around the 5 boroughs. It will involve redesigning some of our current bus routes in Queens and the Bronx, and a whole host of other examples. And I want to make it specific to where we are now. The M103 which stops right outside where we all were standing before. If you're coming from East Harlem to Hunter College to go to school, a lot of times in the morning rush hour to get there for that 9 o'clock class, that can be about a 30-minute ride. We believe that the Better Buses Action Plan will allow us to shave as much as 7 minutes off that ride for a student coming from East Harlem over to Hunter College. Now, 7 minutes, you could say, well, what 7 minutes? How big a deal is that? Well, as New Yorkers, we value every minute, New York minute, right? We really treat time as very, very precious. But if you say you're going to save 7 minutes on each ride every day, that's roughly 9 fewer hours of commuting per semester, 9 hours given back to Stephanie and other students to be able to live their lives and do so many other important things. The bottom line is, to achieve this, we have to deal with the fact that we've got not only a need to change the bus routes and the signals and all, we also have to address the underlying reality of streets that are more clogged than they need to be. I have no doubt that congestion pricing will be one part of that solution, but there's something else that we need to act on. And I hear this from New Yorkers all the time. And, I've done about 60 town hall meetings, and I talk to people all over the 5 boroughs in all sorts of ways. And I have heard this for years and years. People say, what can we do differently about deliveries? All the delivery trucks that take up a lane, that force traffic to have to go around them, and particularly obnoxious when it happens during rush hour. So we've been searching for ways to address this problem once and for all. And we know that a single double-parked delivery truck can disrupt a whole block, can slow down everything, can slow down buses as well. So we have to get at the heart of this. So one of the things we are doing starting today is we're going to triple the number of overnight and off-hour delivery locations in the city that have been achieved through an initiative we've done with businesses. We've worked with about 500 businesses so far. We're going to increase that rapidly to 1,500 business sites. And it's going to work with them to ensure that their deliveries happen before rush hour in the morning or overnight or any time that will not disrupt the flow of traffic. We're finding a lot of interest in the business community, and we found a lot of ways to make that work better for them. This initiative is working. It's going to get expanded rapidly, and as it keeps working, we're going to go farther and farther. So that's another important piece of the equation. Lastly, to say one of the other things we're talking about today, it's not just about our streets, it's not just about our buses or cars, it's also about our sidewalks. And we know that in many parts of this city, particularly in Manhattan, we're seeing sidewalks that are really, really crowded. To some extent, we are victims of our own success. We have more population than ever, we have more businesses and jobs than ever, we have more tourists than ever. We got a lot of building going on, that means a lot of scaffolding. There's a lot of reasons why the sidewalks are so crowded. But it's time to take another step to experiment with pedestrian priority zones, areas that are devoted just to pedestrians, so that we can give people an easier time walking around. We are probably the #1 walking city in America. And it's something, when I talk to people around the country, they always kind of are shocked that New Yorkers walk as much as we walk. We probably walk more than any Americans anywhere. And that's another reason this is a great city. But we have to make it easier in some places to do so, and we're going to be looking at locations for that. And Lower Manhattan is a key example of a place that this kind of strategy could really work. So all of this is about helping people get around. All of this is about improving the quality of life. All of this is about reducing the stress and helping people get where they need to go on time so they can really experience all the good in this city. And this is something New Yorkers deserve. We want this to be the fairest big city in America. This is the kind of thing that New Yorkers deserve. I want to say a few words in Spanish. Estamos trabajando para asegurar que los neoyorquinos tengan más tiempo para disfrutar sus vidas. Seguimos modernizando el transporte colectivo con nuestro plan para acelerar el servicio de autobuses, la ampliación de entregas de camiones nocturnas y estudiando la posibilidad de crear zonas de prioridad peatonal en el Bajo Manhattan. Mejorar la calidad de transporte público nos ayuda a construir una ciudad más justa y mejor para todos. And to make the city better for everyone, I turn to our Deputy Mayor for Operations, who amongst the agencies that reports to her is the Department of Transportation. She's been working very closely with them on a number of the initiatives that we're talking about today. And Deputy Mayor Anglin will now walk us through some of the specifics of today's announcement. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon, everybody. Our streets and transit are about to change in some very big ways. As the mayor said, the MTA is finally poised to have sustainable funding to fix our subways. Congestion pricing is a major part of that, and it's going to help us get traffic moving. But there are a lot of other pieces that we, the city, control, and that we want to continue to do something quickly to get our streets moving in and our buses moving again. On Monday, when we release our One NYC 2050 strategy, we'll be laying out a whole slate of approaches to transportation. But today, we want to preview, as the mayor said, a few of the bigger ones. So first, buses. Outside of our select bus system, bus speeds and ridership have been dropping. And I think we've heard that quite a bit today from our student here. But we want to turn that around. In the mayor's 2019 State of the City, he announced a citywide goal of improving bus speeds by 25% by 2020. And as you can see, we have a plan today called the Better Buses Action Plan. It's a report that was issued today that shows that DOT will be working on 24 projects that will mean faster trips for 600,000 bus riders just in 2019 alone. We've identified 300 intersections that will get special signal prioritization to move buses through congested streets faster. These signals will allow buses to speak with traffic lights, and they'll be able to talk to each other to help things keep moving so that we can increase speeds, hopefully pretty rapidly. The plan today identifies the bus lanes that we will be installing and also those that we'll be upgrading. An example here is we talked about 44,000 people today walk the bus lane down the stretch of Lexington Avenue that we just walked earlier, which will get a new bus lane later this year. We're focused also on other high ridership routes and pinch points, including Madison Avenue and 42nd Street in Midtown, Webster Avenue in the Bronx, Main Street in Flushing, Church Avenue in Brooklyn, and the junction of Narrows Road and Highland Boulevard on Staten Island. These changes will shave 5 to 10 minutes off of riders' commutes, and while that does not sound like a lot, it adds up to hours and then ultimately days in a given year. Next, as the mayor talked about, we're going to focus heavily on truck deliveries. Right now, we have a huge amount of deliveries that are occurring during the busiest times of the day. That means double parking and congestion. The city's research shows that if we shift to delivering on off-peak hours before 6 a.m. and after 7 p.m., a driver can double or triple the number of deliveries a truck can make. So DOT is going to triple the number of business locations currently enrolled in our off-hour delivery program, as the mayor said, from 500 businesses to 1,500. What's great about this program is we will be able to help the businesses make the transition. We will help them by working with distributors to rework schedules and help with on-the-ground logistics to do this. We have a lot of big names in the program already: Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, Chipotle, Dunkin' Donuts, Just Salad, who's here with us today, Representative, Rite Aid, and Whole Foods. DOT is preparing mass mailings to all businesses in areas of Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn to make the case for our off-hour delivery program and to try to persuade them to come into the program. We'll go door to door to promote it. And in addition, any business who is interested can just call 311 right now, and we'll start working with you immediately. So our experience is when business realize how much we are willing to do to help them come into this program, they're willing to make the change. So lastly, as the mayor said, we're going to give pedestrians more room to breathe in one of the most crowded parts of the city, Lower Manhattan. We're calling them pedestrian priority streets. We'll take space that's currently dedicated to cars and give it back to pedestrians, helping to unclog sidewalks. I walk around Lower Manhattan, and I know that I see people walking in the streets because the sidewalks are so crowded, and that is a big safety issue we want to address. We have a mix of tools from pedestrian-only plazas to shared streets that actually allow very limited vehicle access but have very slow travel rates. DOT will look to install these treatments later this summer or fall, following a very engaging community outreach, because we know that we have to make sure we are putting these in the right place with the community effort to make sure that we are choosing the right sites, and it can be harmonious for everybody. We want to get this right, and we think that this is the right time to do it. So when we add all this up, new subway funding, congestion pricing that we just secured in Albany, faster buses for hundreds of thousands of riders, shifting thousands of deliveries to the overnight, and giving pedestrians more space, we're talking about changes that are going to make a big difference in how not only people get around this city, but how people live in the city, and as the mayor said, the quality of life that people have living in this city. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for really helping us push these initiatives along. And I look forward to working with DOT to make sure that we do implement them as fast as we can and to get all the good work out to the people who will then see a difference in the way of life.
Amen. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Anglin. And now turning to a strong voice for people in this borough, and I think Gail Brewer would say that Manhattanites are not afraid to say if something needs to be fixed or done differently, and Gail certainly isn't. And you have focused on select bus service, among other things, and we welcome you today. Gail Brewer, Borough President of Manhattan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I am pleased to be here. I want to thank the Department of Transportation and everyone to announce these updates to the One NYC plan. It will make our city more livable. It will improve our bus system, and it needs all the help we can get. And I want to thank Stephanie, but I'm not as nice because I teach at Hunter at 8:10 a.m. And if a student is late, I'm not as nice as your professor. So I just want you to know.
Wow, harsh, very harsh.
I
think you're off message there.
I'm not as nice, but but congratulations to you, Stephanie. Really, congratulations.
That took a lot of twists and turns right there.
A lot of congratulations, really. So the DOT really is making tangible strides towards pulling buses out of the traffic that they've been mired in for so long. And as our city has grown, you know that our buses have struggled to keep up with the added congestion, with citywide bus speeds sometimes topping out at 7.44 miles per hour, which is very slow. So we are excited about the changes coming for riders, particularly in our case. I see the long list, and it is a phenomenal list, but we've been focused on the M14 and the M96 bus routes, the M96 being right near my house. I take it often. In November of last year, we sent a letter to the MTA objecting to their delay of the SBS implementation of the M96 Street route. But this Better Buses Action Plan is really good news, because even though those planned upgrades would have helped the 14,000 daily riders who move across 96th Street at 4.4 miles per hour, I'm delighted to see this bus listed in the Better Buses Action Plan, because even though it's not SBS, I think the upgrades that you are suggesting will be implemented, and it will essentially make the bus go as fast as it would have anyway under the other plan. So it's really exciting. On the M14 route, we did send a letter to the MTA requesting that they expedite installation of SBS in advance of that thing called the L train slowdown on April 26th. And at the DOT, I'm perhaps the only one who wants a busway along 14th Street. Everything in Manhattan is controversial, including that. But I also sent a letter even more recently, and this is where I have to say the DOT has been very helpful, because we all want a local service along the new SBS, because it is critical that we improve bus speeds. And to the credit of MTA and DOT, we are looking at the SBS on 14th Street, whether or not we get the busway. But we can't forget our actual riders, and we know, although it's not relevant today, that on that 13,000 daily riders, there are a lot of seniors, and we have to figure out to be sure that they're taken care of in terms of the actual stops. So that's the buses is a very exciting, and I know that NYPD will be involved, making sure that as Stephanie indicated, the challenge of moving the cars and trucks that might be in the way. Second, I just want to mention the great news about delivery at night. As you know, as the mayor indicated, Manhattanites are very vocal. They never shut up. And one of the things they point out is that nighttime delivery would be an asset, would be a blessing almost to the streets, and certainly those large trucks. Now, Trader Joe's, I hope it's on your list, because their friggin' truck on 92nd and Columbus was just there the other day, and it's huge. And it was blocking traffic.
We're announcing a major enforcement action against Trader
Thank
Joe's
you.
today.
92nd Street, great supermarket, truck too big.
Great.
The third thing I want to say is to congratulate the mayor and everyone on thinking about pedestrian space in Lower Manhattan. I also want to thank Catherine McVeigh Hughes, who's here today, because formerly as a board member and now just as somebody who's an active citizen and who knows and cares about her neighborhood, she too has been pushing to find ways to have pedestrians have access in Lower Manhattan where she lives. I think that we did something similar with DOT last summer with a shared space between pedestrians and cars moving very slowly. It works extremely well. So I'm hoping that reclaiming this space for pedestrians will increase the livability of Lower Manhattan. Although it's already a great place to live, there are an awful lot of good news, tourists and workers, but they do need more pedestrian space. So thank you to the mayor and particularly members of his administration and DOT for your leadership on improving our city's livability and really, really important, crucial bus system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gail. There's some people at one store in Manhattan who are very afraid right now. You struck fear in their hearts.
The truck is big.
Yeah, we got that impression. So I want to introduce our colleague who works at one of the most literally named commercial establishments in history, Just Salad. And Just Salad, I didn't know until today that Just Salad has a chief sustainability officer, but it does, which I think is great. And they have 25 locations in New York City. They participate in DOT's off-hours delivery pilot. And Janani Lee, who is the chief sustainability officer, is a true believer in this approach, and you will hear it in her voice. Janani, we welcome you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for including Just Salad in this event. We joined the Department of Transportation's off-hours delivery pilot in 2010, way back when, and it's become a key part of our business ever since. Freshness is at the core of Just Salad's principles. Our produce arrives fresh daily. 30,000 pounds of lettuce every week are prepared by 400 of our teammates across 25 New York City locations. They start their mornings by prepping, chopping, and washing greens. And since we joined the off-hours delivery pilot, we've noticed our greens are fresher than ever before, and our guests have noticed too. Just Salad is also committed to sustainability. We're proud to be home of the world's largest reusable bowl program. It's our signature bowl program. And this means that, it's also the only restaurant reusable program that has been approved by the NYC Department of Health. Sustainability for us goes beyond the bowl, though. We're focused on our food's journey from farm to store. We're drawn to the off-hours delivery pilot because early deliveries mean fewer idling trucks and lower emissions. Our program also eliminates the logistical headaches of waiting for delivery trucks, causing prep delays, inventory issues, and labor costs. So it's a win-win for everyone. We encourage other restaurants to join the Department of Transportation's off-hours delivery program. It's good for our planet, it's good for our city, and it's good for business. Many thanks to Mayor de Blasio and the Department of Transportation for making this program a reality.
Thank you very much, Janani. Thank you for your enthusiasm for salad and for this program. So we are going to take questions on the Better Buses Action Plan and the other elements of the plan we're talking about today with the deliveries and the pedestrian zones. Let's take questions on all of that to begin. Questions, please.
So what role do you envision community boards playing in these street changes for the bus improvements? Obviously, it says in the release there's going to be a little bit more involvement with the pedestrianization in Lower Manhattan, but what about bus lanes and things like that? Are you just going to do them?
I'll let my colleagues talk to the specifics of the process. I mean, look, I think in general we have had a lot of discussion with community boards on many of the things that DOT does, and as everyone knows, that's a consultative process, and sometimes that leads to some very specific changes, and sometimes the voices are heard, but we still move forward with a vision. Unquestionably, we have to get this reduction in speed. So one of the things we learned, for example, with SBS, is sometimes community boards and community leaders would say, here's a way to get your goal a different way. Here's a revision you can make that doesn't interfere with your goal, but is helpful to local businesses or, addresses some other community need. We are very, very interested in that kind of feedback. But I want to be clear that we must speed up our buses. So one way or another, we're going to get there. Either you want to speak to that?
No, I agree. For, new bus lanes or bike lanes, DOT does extensive community outreach, community meetings. We talk to and listen to the people living in the area before they map out a plan. We don't just map out a plan and say, this is where we're going to go. So we make sure that we're integrating that within the community and talking with people for the community.
I just add that, of all the issues, the community boards, since I talk to them all day long, 24 hours a day almost, they would be very pleased with this compared to all the other topics that they have to deal with. So I think this would be very positive in their mind.
Go ahead.
On the pedestrian priority zones, the release mentions looking at changing street parking regulations. I think Deputy Mayor Anglin mentioned giving space dedicated to cars back to pedestrians. What exactly are we looking at? Are we looking at driving lanes? Are we looking at taking away parking?
So I'm happy to jump in. So we are still working through the areas as well as what the areas will look like, but often it's common that you might see that there are certain streets where we don't have any parking and that we mark those streets differently so that people know you can't drive down there. It's that type of thing that we're kind of called shared streets or pedestrian plazas. So the shared streets, we take away parking in those areas, but it makes it move faster in areas around it so that all you really allowed is people to come in and maybe do a drop off or a pickup because we want to make sure that people need to get something they can. So yes, you will see changing in parking and different markings and various different things depending on what we do.
Parking across the board in those areas?
No, it's going to be different areas. We're going to look at what works for that area. So it depends. Not always going to be eliminating completely, but we have to look at what our goal is for each area we choose and what's the best way to accomplish that. And some maybe eliminate parking, and some may be changing parking hours. So it really depends on the area.
Yes.
How does the delivery aspect of this plan relate to the Clear Curbs, Clear Lane initiative from a couple years ago? Was that program a success? I don't think we got any findings from that.
Yeah, I'll start and then Laura can jump in. We got mixed findings so far from what we looked at, and we're not done yet is the truth in terms of trying to figure out this issue. This approach working with the businesses has been very impressive, meaning we're seeing real results quickly. So we certainly want to deepen that. But I think as we look around the city trying to figure out where specific restrictions will work and not, I think the thing that came back from the pilot was it really varies by location and condition. So we've got to figure out sort of a bigger, better pilot that allows us to test more places and figure out where it's best suited. I still think there's a lot of merit. I mean, Gail and I, we have known each other for several decades. And I say that because we've spent our lives talking to New Yorkers, and boy, you hear this from a lot of people. And I don't think they're missing something. I think they're right on the money to say there's got to be some way to channel deliveries away from the most sensitive places and the most sensitive times. And certainly this initiative is one of the pieces, but there may be other tools as well that we can find. Go ahead.
Just follow up on that, a kind of related question. It seems like the city has talked a lot about the challenges that, Fresh Direct and other home delivery groceries that plays, where pretty much the resident gets to pick when they want it delivered, at what time. Have you had any discussions with those companies as to, maybe restricting customers' options, or like where do those types of deliveries play in that part of this?
I'll see if Eric has. I don't believe we're looking at restricting those hours, but I'll let DOT answer that question more specifically.
Right, and what we do talk to all those companies, and we want to make sure that everyone follows the rules of the road, that they're not parking in bus stops or in places where they shouldn't be. We also know that they've provided a lot of availability for fresh produce to a lot of places. So our goal is really to work with them and try to find ways to make deliveries legal and possible. And not, there are places where restrictions are appropriate. There are places where working with companies are appropriate. And we take a nuanced approach in looking at each of those.
Let me offer a layman's perspective, and Eric, you can provide an erudite response to my layman's perspective, that I think some of the biggest problems we have are not smaller residential streets where you might find a Fresh Direct truck, for example. I think it is the classic, a street that's really important for people trying to get around, particularly in rush hour, and lots of stores, and, just one delivery truck can screw everything up. Multiple delivery trucks can really screw everything up. And that is, to me, the fixable problem that this initiative speaks to, and hopefully, some other tools would speak to as well. Tell me if I'm in the ballpark.
Oh, you're in the ballpark. You're at the
I'm
plate.
in the ballpark.
Absolutely
Thank
right.
you.
No, it's exactly right. We need the busiest places that really block up traffic. That's obviously where we get the most bang for our effort in focusing.
Yes.
The M14 route on 14th Street is on your list, but the MTA has already been trying to install SBS, and they're already at a stalemate because local residents want the local stops, but you can't have the local stops and SBS if you want SBS to work. So how are you going to solve this already existing stalemate and multiply it across the city?
And then throw the L train in, and we're having a lot of fun on this issue. So, Laura, I think you're saying we're hoping to have some updates. We've been talking constantly with community leaders and residents and, of course, MTA, and we're hoping for next week to have some
Correct.
update on this.
Correct.
So
That is our goal.
stay tuned. Way back.
There's
Way back.
there's no.
No, way back first. Go ahead.
Sorry, so if we're talking about pedestrianized zones in Lower Manhattan, that's an area that has an enormous problem with placard abuse. And what's to stop that from kind of messing this up?
Well, I'll be the layman again, and then the experts can jump in. I think if you have a pedestrianized zone, the placard abuse becomes even more obvious and, even more straightforward to enforce. But again, and Laura's been working on this intensely with her team, the new approaches on placard abuse, I think, are going to change the entire reality because of the use of technology and sort of taking, and we were honest about this when we made the announcement, taking the human element out of it. I love humanity, but when it comes to placard enforcement, there's a human challenge that we need to overcome. So, one, I think the bigger solution will soon be here. Two, I think if you're trying to abuse a placard and you're like the only car parked on a street, you probably maximize your chances of enforcement. Go ahead, right in front of you. Go ahead.
There's no NYPD presence here, but a lot of this seems to boil down to enforcement, especially the trucks, blocking bus lanes and the like. How do you ramp up enforcement when it seems to be such a problem?
Well, let me say there is no NYPD presence simply because we're talking about three specific things that are proactive and not about enforcement, but unquestionably enforcement has to be available as part of the equation. When we talk about in this plan, for example, the signal, using the signal technology differently, that's not an enforcement issue. That's using technology to give a bus a green light that it wouldn't have had otherwise and help it move along. Or obviously, the designing the streets better is a good thing unto itself. But yes, we've announced previously that we're going to be very aggressive about bus lane enforcement. And, some of what's going to happen here, like out here on Lexington, is you're going to be able to see the bus lane really, really clearly. Like we're taking all the mystery out of it. We're going to make it much more dedicated, bright colored, clear, delineated, which is going to make, I think, it even clearer to people that enforcement can and will happen effectively.
And if I could just add, we previously made an announcement with the police department about enhanced enforcement within bus lanes. And just in that short period of time, the data is showing that 432 cars have been towed. Over 16,000 summonses have been issued for bus lane violations. And where this may not seem a lot, what we're also seeing anecdotally is a car pulls into a bus lane to run into a store. The police car pulls up behind them, and they run out and say, I'm moving. So I think the presence within the bus lanes of the enforcement we're seeing is really starting to make a difference. And in addition, we also are doing more cameras in the bus lanes to ensure that we'll be able to ticket people if they're inappropriately in the bus lane. So I think these two initiatives and others that we announced earlier are really starting to grab hold.
Just to pick up on this point, because I'm reading over Laura's shoulder, that just for January through March, since we announced the enforcement in the bus lanes, that's almost 17,000 summonses just for 3 months. So even by New York standards, that's a serious number. Please, Greg.
Have you guys thought about the confluence of the crazy BQX, I'm sorry, not BQX, sorry about that.
BQE.
BQE, even better.
Yes, even better.
The BQE and the implementation of the downtown, restricting the downtown zone at the same time that you're going to have to deal with BQE. Have you
I'm sorry, when you say restricting the downtown zone, you mean the Lower Manhattan, or what are you saying?
Manhattan.
How the Lower Manhattan pedestrian,
What, back to 2020, I think?
at the end of 2020, yeah.
Almost exactly the same time when I think you guys have to start working on the BQE. Because there's a time, there's a clock ticking on that.
Yeah.
Correct. By 2026 on the BQE, if we do not do anything, then trucks will be banned from using it. And that is our goal, to avoid that. I think that obviously, as we go through the process for the BQE, anything we do, we're now doing a panel of experts, we're doing more community involvement in it. Anything we do will require traffic studies and environmental studies. So I think all that will need to be integrated with the different parts of this. We're not closing all of Lower Manhattan with our pedestrian priority zones, so please understand it's going to be areas that we look at that we feel, well, traffic still will be able to move, but it will really benefit the pedestrians. So the both will have to meet at some point, and we'll have to factor them in as we're doing all these different proposals.
Well,
And DOT does this all the time.
Two pieces. One, I want to say, because I want to make sure we're not giving people the wrong impression on the pedestrian zone. So first of all, we're going to be certainly talking to communities about what it would look like and how much to do. There are clearly places where you have major streets you would never turn into a pedestrian zone. So, you know, a classic place to turn into a pedestrian priority area is a less used street, for example, a street that, you know, it doesn't have such an impact to do that. But on the question of BQE and congestion pricing, I think pulling out this point from Laura's answer, congestion pricing will be up and running, give or take a year and a half, a little more. Action on the BQE, because we're now studying a whole range of options, and you're right, then you go to all sorts of design and one thing and another. That's going to be substantially behind the initiation of congestion pricing. So at least we will have a chance to figure out how to make congestion pricing work in the here and now before any final action is taken on the BQE. We do have to get to some plan for it sooner rather than later, but they're not going to immediately overlap, which is good. Go ahead.
From earlier, I know you said you're going to announce something on 14th Street next week, but point blank, do you support an M14 or 14th Street busway?
Next week is a good time to talk about it. It's a real discussion with the community, and I want to be respectful of that, and we're going to come back with what we think is a fair outcome. Go ahead.
Do you have a cost for all these plans?
A cost for these particular pieces we're announcing today?
So I think the bus action plan, we have $280 million in total capital funding already that we're looking at for this. And we're going to add about $12 million in DOT's annual expense budget for bus improvements. We'll also need to work with the PD and traffic agents to figure out what we're going to need to mitigate as we transition into these. So we're working through those numbers now. And I don't know if you have anything else, Eric, but I think those are the main costs associated with this, because the bus lanes are capital intensive.
Right, and I don't know the answer to this, but I don't mind asking out loud. I do not remember, since we announced it in State of the City, if we included it in the preliminary or we're anticipating including it in the exec, the capital dollars.
I will have to check, sir.
Okay, we'll come back on that. The delivery work, which DOT, again, has already started, that is about some extra personnel, but it's a small but high impact investment.
I think there'll be about $1 million worth of mailing and outreach to businesses for that program.
Right. Okay, who else back there?
Mayor, you're talking about moving buses along, and how about moving motorists along? How will all these changes affect perhaps the speed of vehicles in the streets? And the second part of this, will the bus lanes have certain hours of restriction, because some of them do and some of them don't? What's the future for that?
So I'll let my colleagues talk to the hours question. I mean, look, we're entering a new world here with congestion pricing. So certainly when you're talking about the central business district of Manhattan, you know, we have to look at the whole picture. What will congestion pricing do to reduce the number of cars coming in and vehicles coming in? Also, over time, what will it do to help us improve the subways and buses so that more and more people take them? There's no question that people started turning away from subways and buses because they weren't working as well. If you start to fix those problems, I think a lot of people will come back to them, because when they're working, they're far superior to driving in many parts of the city. So this is all going to evolve over time. I would argue on a sheer numbers level, when you think about the 600,000 New Yorkers who are going to benefit from a plan to speed up buses by 25%, that just is so important. That's the priority. We obviously hope the whole equation works for everyone, But right now, I'm thinking about, the sheer numbers of people who take our buses who need a faster ride. And I think this is a smart way to get it for them. On the hours, anyone wants to speak?
Yeah, I think I'll turn it to Eric, but different bus lanes, depending on conditions, have different hours. They monitor that quickly before we implement. They figure out what they could be. I'm pretty sure not every bus lane has the same hours, and not every bus lane in this plan will have the same hours. But Eric, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, that's right. We look at each place very thoughtfully and very individually, that just because something works in one place doesn't mean we do the same thing everywhere. So we look at the traffic flow on each street, we talk to communities, we talk to businesses, and we try to find the right plan that does the best for the most people. And we look at the traffic very carefully too, but whether it's looking at signal timing, looking at, we can do turns lanes at intersections, things that can make the bus go faster while still improving the overall outcome for everyone.
Okay, on this, Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, do you know, on average, how fast a city bus moves right now? I know it varies.
A lot slower than it should be. What's our latest?
It's about 7.5 miles per hour across the whole city.
7.5 miles per hour right now. So what will this 25% improvement bring it to?
So we think it gets it up towards 8 to 9 miles an hour, which, it sounds small, but as the mayor so eloquently said, that adds up to minutes every day, that adds up to hours over the course of the year, and it adds up to a more reliable system too, where instead of having to wake up early to get to school, you can know when that bus is going to come, you know when it's going to get there. It's incredibly valuable, even that little increment.
But Eric, I also want to say in the name of clarity, because it feels like that averaging kind of pulls together so many things that's a little deceptive. First of all, I don't know if you include express buses and other things in it or not, but,
Yeah, it's
but
everything.
some buses, depending on their route, clearly move a lot faster. Others are going to move a lot slower because of being in a highly congested area, for example, or a very busy area, different times of day and all. So, that average, you can safely say, Gloria, that says on the low end, some buses are really crawling, and that we want to do something about. There's obviously buses that we've all been on that move a lot better than that. But I take it down to the human element as well. If you can give someone back, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on their ride every single day, that really matters to them.
Each of these 5 improvement areas, is there an exact timeline for each, or are they all expected to be completed by 2021?
We do have a schedule that we can provide, that will go through our process. We have to map them out so that we can have appropriate construction workers and make sure we have traffic flowing. So yes, there will be a schedule. And Eric, will they all be done by 2020?
So the ones in this report today, we're saying are planned for this year, and that we expect those to be done in 2019, and we would have similar programs in future years, working with the MTA as they do their redesigns around the city.
So these 5 that are in the announcement today, 20 by this year?
Yes, the 5 are examples from the 24 that are in the report that we expect to all be done this year.
Okay, anyone else on this announcement today? Any of the pieces in this announcement going once, twice? Okay, let me do a little comment up front before we go into other topics. And I want to just talk about the Mueller report, obviously on everyone's mind today. And look, based on everything, all the analysis I'm seeing, certainly from a lot of folks who are looking at this from an objective legal perspective, that even in its redacted version, the Mueller report is a catalog of outrageous acts and possibly criminal acts. There's a lot more here that needs to be looked at. There's a huge attempt going on by the White House and the Justice Department to downplay it. It should not be downplayed, and Congress, I'm absolutely convinced, will look very hard at the situation and determine what action needs to be taken. But I also have to say that as we're watching a huge amount of time and energy being taken up by that discussion, we're not seeing enough time and energy going into the discussion on climate change. And I say this very specifically. I want, obviously, the Congress and prosecutors to get down to the bottom of what happened in the president's dealings with Russia and all other associated matters. But I think at the same time, we have to focus more on the urgent issues facing us right this minute. And there's no question that a lot of issues are being lost here that need to get much more urgent attention. And bluntly, I sometimes fear that the White House actually takes advantage of this other discussion, even though they may not like it, to be able to not answer for things that are absolutely existential, like the threat of global warming. So that is one point I want to make. The second point I want to make is, and I say this as someone who believes in what I believe philosophically and as someone who's a Democrat, I think we have to be very clear there's going to be an election in 2020. I think a lot of people have been waiting for this report, hoping it would lead to impeachment proceedings, and that would be the way that change happens in this country. I have never believed that, and I don't believe it now. I believe that the way change will happen in this country is through the 2020 election, and that folks who want to see change should put their focus there, not on hoping that this report leads to one thing or another. There should, again, be full follow-up on it. But really, the thing that we can depend on is an election, and the better way to make change is an election. And I hope that we, while following up appropriately on the report, get attention back on the bigger issues at hand so that people can make their choice about the future of this country. Take any questions way back.
Census numbers released today show that actually more people are leaving New York City than they have in more than a decade. I wanted to get your take on it and see, do you kind of, why do you think so many people, or 38,000 people, are leaving New York?
Yeah, I mean, I want to caution, and I haven't gotten all of the details. I think I'm very much questioning, our team is very much questioning those results and the methodology that was used. Every indicator we have seen in recent years is of steady growth. And, we're seeing stuff come out of Washington. I don't even have to talk about the 2020 census and all the problems with that, but we're seeing a lot of very questionable methodologies. So I would say to all New Yorkers, what we see with our own eyes appears to be the real truth, that our population has been steadily growing. And yeah, I'm sure there's some outflow, but from everything I can see, it's being more than made up for by the inflow. But we'll give you a more detailed analysis going forward. Way back.
Going back to what you were saying about the climate, would you give us your reaction to the green building legislation that was passed in the City Council today? I'm sure you've heard from this building community, building ownership community, about the hardships of it. How do you anticipate they're going to absorb their costs when they pass along to its tenants?
It has to be done. First of all, I want to commend Speaker Johnson and Councilmember Constantinides and the whole council. They're doing something very important. And we worked very, very closely in a lot of detail over these last months to get to something that we all agree on strongly. We did meet, there's a lot of discussion with the private sector, with the real estate community, but in the end, this is an existential threat. This is about survival. And right now, with our national government having walked away from the Paris Agreement, New York City and other cities have to step up even more, and states have to step up. Like, this is about survival. So if you look at this plan, there's plenty of time for businesses to adapt to it. But it's not an option to ignore this threat. And we baked in very serious penalties if any building owners don't take it seriously, because we just don't have a choice. A lot of people think about cars when they think about emissions and global warming. In New York City, buildings are an even more important source. So this is where we can make a difference. We're going to do a lot to work with the business community to make it work, and I do believe technology continues to improve, which will make their job easier. But we could not lowball this. We couldn't, walk softly on this one. This is about survival. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, StreetsBlog reported today that of the 11,000 pedestrians reported as injured on streets last year by the NYPD, only 9 were hit by e-bike riders. Does that challenge, contradict, or give pause to your view that the e-bikes are unsafe or a safety concern?
I understand why, I appreciate those facts, and I understand why people would say, hey, this is not as important as some other things, but I would simply say we've got a class of bicycles that go, or e-bikes, I should say, that go way too fast, where there's plenty of evidence of them being used in a manner that's reckless, that doesn't conform to the way all the other types of transportation work. In other words, a car, a truck, a motorcycle, they're on the street, they follow all the traffic rules. If they don't, it's very clear what happens. You know, a bicycle in a bike lane. This has been, to me, the mode of transportation where we've seen a lot of recklessness, a lot of going the wrong way down the street, a lot of speed at levels they shouldn't be for very closely packed areas. It's a problem. Now, do I think it's a unresolvable problem? No, I think we can resolve it. I think if we can work with our colleagues in Albany, one of the things I find promising is putting some physical speed, limitation technology into the e-bikes. That could be a game changer because the pedal assist bikes, to me, are not the problem. It's the ones that go faster. So I think there is a pathway, and I think we can find a way to help people who have the current bikes to convert them to something that's safer. But I've been asked a question, I appreciate the question, but I'm just not going to stop saying I think it's a safety problem. And a lot of my constituents think it's a safety problem.
But doesn't the data seem to indicate that concern is more about perception than reality?
I think it is not perception to say that we know these bikes are being used differently than everything else around them. They are faster than an average bike, obviously, and they don't conform the way a car, a truck, a motorcycle would to traffic rules. It's just a known fact. You don't tend to see motorcycles going the wrong way on a street or sometimes going on the sidewalk. You do with e-bikes, and it's just a different reality, and I think it's a problematic reality. Now, I don't know if Gail Brewer has a comment. I like inviting controversy.
I think that the e-bikes, because in Manhattan in particular, you have a lot of seniors who are nervous about them. We have to figure out the enforcement. I don't know if it's possible to do it with an actual inhibitor in terms of the speed, but we have to figure out something that has more enforcement. And the police officers are trying. You see the summons lists that they have at every single discussion. And the other possibility would be to have some kind of a registration, so some of the motorbikes, the small motorbikes, have a state registration. That would help because people don't know what the number is and they go flying by and they want to be able to register their complaint. So I think there are ways of solving it, but it needs attention before you go full force. And again, I know that there's only one topic in New York. There's two topics. One is real estate and the other is bicycles. Those are it.
Yes.
Talking kind of related, City Bike pulled all of its pedal assist e-bikes last week. I've talked to numerous people who have broken bones after they flipped over the handlebars. Are you introducing any more oversight into that program to make sure that those bikes are up to snuff and safe for riders? And what's your response to them pulling them?
Yeah, look, it came as a real surprise, and it's a serious issue. It's a serious concern. In terms of the next steps, Laura, DOT, I know we're looking at it. What's the latest?
So you're right, they did pull them. They pulled them in other cities as well. So we are working with them to figure out what their plan is forward. We will also require more reporting from them on any incidences happening going forward so we can keep better track of it. But I think the goal for us would be work closely, monitor, and ensure that the safety measures that are necessary are in, and we're in the process of doing that, and DOT is in the process of doing it. But the second part is that we're going to require more incident reporting, so that we can see what's going on in the field, and that's a new thing we're going to implement.
Way back.
So staying kind of on that same topic, according to NYP data, traffic fatalities or traffic injuries are up 41% from last year. Now, other than the existing Vision Zero initiatives, I was wondering if there are any specific things you were planning on doing to combat that violence.
Look, we now have 5 years of Vision Zero data that proves the initiative works, the strategy works. But I've said every single year, we just have to go much farther. So there will be more enforcement on things like speeding, failure to yield. Unquestionably, that's been ramped up every year. We intend to do more. There's a lot of street redesigns that are coming online soon that we think are going to make a big impact. Vision Zero, it literally will have to grow every single year. And look, anytime we see an uptick, I mean, this is a human tragedy. We hate that and take it very, very seriously. Sometimes there are things we look at that we immediately know we can do something differently. Other times it's other factors. But I would say to you, it's just more and more and more. And certainly on the enforcement level, every time we double down on enforcement, we get a good impact. Yes.
Back to the question of e-bikes. I mean, don't you see cars going way too fast on streets, or cars mounting their curbs, crashing into storefronts?
Oh. Cars wait, my friend. Cars mounting the curb, crashing into storefronts. I'm with you. Just let me finish. Oh yeah, you're very into this question. That is a horrible and aberrant situation. I am saying with e-bikes, you see e-bikes go up on the sidewalk, not in the middle of a crash, but as part of their practice, and going wrong way on the street as part of their practice. I've seen it plenty of times. It's been reported to me by lots of my constituents. You don't see cars drive on the sidewalk a whole lot or go wrong way down the street a whole lot as a matter of course. Some do it, and they get caught a lot of the time, or God forbid there's an accident. E-bikes, the problem with them is they're betwixt and between. They kind of don't fit any easy category, and therefore the people who use them take some liberties, and the law has been amorphous, and we've got to bring all these pieces together. Now, the good news is if we can knock the speed levels down physically, I think that will really substantially help address the problem.
Just the second part of that question, are you sensitive though that you promote yourself as a proud champion of the sanctuary city? A lot of these e-bike riders are immigrant delivery workers. I mean, this is how they make their livelihood. Are you worried, this crackdown is kind of, targeting them, even if you say it's supposed to be towards businesses, but it's...
Yeah, well, first of all, it is supposed to be toward the businesses, and I've had this conversation with NYPD that we have to ensure that all precincts are educated on this point. Wherever the summons can be given to, let's say, the restaurant rather than the worker, we want that. Now, what we've found since is some workers work for these kind of consortiums that, are their own companies, and that creates a little bit of a problem. But I got to go with safety first. I really have to emphasize this. This is a safety problem. And it's a safety problem waiting to happen a lot of the time, too. To Gail's point, I hear this a lot from senior citizens in particular, and I got to start with safety. Now, I would also say to all the restaurants, for example, there's other ways to deliver. Before they used e-bikes as much, they found plenty of other methodologies to deliver. They could be using the ones that are already legal and straightforward. So I don't think there's only one way to solve it, but what I hope we can do in Albany in the next couple of months is come up with a way to legalize, reduce the speed, have some kind of transitional effort to help the current folks. I think there's a pathway to that. But if you say, even though I absolutely believe in respecting and supporting immigrants, but there's a public safety issue, I'm always going to start with the public safety need. Way back, way back. Yeah, that's you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, could you or someone on the dais share with us, our readers, our listeners, and our viewers, what the current regulations are regarding the use of mechanical, electric, or motorized bicycles in New York City?
Sure. E-bikes, as we know them, not the pedal assist, but the other e-bikes, are illegal. Take it away.
That's right. So if you're riding a regular bike, if you're riding what we call a pedal assist e-bike, which means you're still pedaling and the power kicks off when you go over a certain speed, those are legal. If you're riding something that you're using a throttle, you're turning the handle, right now that is not legal under state law. It is not legal in New York City, and we do want everyone to follow the laws.
Yes.
Last year, out of more than 3,000 instances, ACS, using emergency powers, removed kids from their parents without going to court nearly half of that time. In many cases, WNYC did an investigation and found there was no emergency at all. Do you see a need to change this program?
I need to see the specifics that you're talking about. I used to, in my previous work on the City Council, do oversight for ACS as chair of the General Welfare Committee for 8 years, and I'm very sensitive to the point that that power to remove a child needs to be used very carefully. I will say it's kind of similar to the previous question. When in doubt, you have to err on the side of safety. And if ACS believes there's an imminent threat to a child, of course they need to act. And a lot of times that is a very time-sensitive reality. But we have to make sure it's done right, and we have to make sure that that is not overused. So I would be very happy to see what you've put together and see if there's something we have to address. Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, do you have an update for us on measles? I have it here that the city has issued fines to 3 individuals who have
Doctor, come join us.
vaccinated.
And you got a chair there? Yes. Dr. Daskalakis, our Deputy Commissioner for Department of Health, why don't you give the update from today?
So,
Name and title, because I don't know.
yes,
Sorry.
it's Dimitri Daskalakis. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Disease Control at the Department of Health. So our update today is that we have issued 3 violations to individuals who did not follow our order, the emergency order, to be vaccinated if they lived in certain zip codes in Williamsburg in the 48 hours after the order. So really by early morning of April 12th.
How do you find them?
We have our disease detectives that work around the clock identifying potential contacts to measles. So we used our contact tracing as the way to identify individuals who did not receive vaccine as ordered.
And are those summonses all for $1,000?
They've gotten violations, and those will be referred to oath, where they may be violated. They make it a violation, a fine up to $1,000.
Okay, sorry, my last question is, did you also issue another closure order for 4 schools in the area?
So we are we will be closing 4 additional schools in Williamsburg. That's correct.
As of tonight, tomorrow morning?
The orders will be delivered today.
So 4 tomorrow.
4 tomorrow.
Do you have those?
Meaning they need to be closed tomorrow.
Do you have those located?
I do. I can actually give you the names.
Why don't you got them?
I do. There's Beth Raquel School at 6884 Harrison. That's in 11211. 241 Keep Street. That's a preschool in 11211. 590 Bedford. That is a preschool in 11249. And Beth Raquel School for Girls at 720 Wythe. That is 11249.
Anything else on measles for a moment? Just want to see if there's any other questions. Well, we got that. Go ahead.
New diagnosed numbers.
What's the number of cases today?
So as of today, our last public update was 329. I can update for today if that's okay,
Please,
Mr. Mayor? Sure.
please.
So that's 359 confirmed cases to date.
359.
359.
Okay. Go ahead, Juliet.
So New York One on Monday night, your response to Trump's proposal to release asylum seekers to sanctuary cities, namely that you'd sue to stop him, is at odds with a number of other mayors who say they'd simply welcome the immigrants with open arms. What's that daylight about there?
I haven't seen what my colleague mayors are saying. I am saying, look at the origin of this idea. We already know about the dialogue that happened at the Department of Homeland Security, where officials of the Department of Homeland Security identified this as an illegal policy. It is clearly about political retribution and political targeting. And that's absolutely inappropriate when it comes to dealing with the lives of immigrants. That's using immigrants as political pawns. That's illegal and inappropriate. It also has strong resonance with the president's attempt to deny security funding to certain cities based on his political judgment, which was found illegal by a federal court. I think it's absolutely in the same vein.
I spoke to some immigrant advocates yesterday, and even a city council member who said the message is confusing and in fact stokes some fear among immigrants in the city who are already concerned because ICE is in the courts.
I would say after years of this city showing our respect for immigrants, our support for our fellow New Yorkers, including fellow New Yorkers who happen to be undocumented, all the ways we do that, and the fact we don't ask documentation status, I think it's very well established in immigrant communities how this city respects and supports immigrants. I think my saying that this is an illegal, immoral policy doesn't change that one iota. Way back.
I wanted to see if you had a comment on the man who brought gasoline into St. Patrick's Cathedral, and will you have increased security at Catholic churches or other churches around the city?
I spoke to Cardinal Dolan about this earlier today. Yeah, look, this is a profoundly troubling incident. It obviously appears to be very individual, but coming on the heels of Notre Dame, very, very troubling. And we have a substantial security presence around St. Patrick's. We're going to make sure, of course, that's continuous. I, on first blush, don't assume a bigger issue regarding Catholic churches. Not hearing that from NYPD at this point. We'll look at every angle. I think this was a very particular individual act, but it is a reminder that we're going to, do everything we have to do to protect St. Patrick's. Greg.
So the City Department of Investigation substantiated an allegation that you violated the city conflict of interest rules that all city employees are supposed to follow. And I, first of all, can't remember that happening with any other New York City mayor in recent memory. And so and then there's no punishment as far as I can tell, or not one that's public. The substantiation report was not made public. It was filed back in October. What kind of role model are you providing for the other city workers who have to follow these same rules?
I feel that throughout the last 5 years, 4 months, I and my administration have shown that we do things the right way, and we do things on the merits, we do things legally and appropriately. I feel very consistent about that. And everything that you're referring to has been looked at exhaustively and been addressed.
But it hasn't, this substantiation of specific...
Again, it's been looked at and addressed.
Do you feel that is that ethical behavior?
I feel absolutely that I've acted consistent with all the right standards throughout, and everything's been looked at and addressed.
So you don't think
Last one.
So
Go
you
ahead.
don't think that the DOI finding has any merit?
I've spoken to it.
Follow up. You've actually never been asked about this report because it's never been out publicly. It is substantiating that you violated conflicts of interest rules.
Again, all these matters have been looked at, investigated, no further action taken. That's all there is to it.
Did the conflict of interest board discipline you in any way?
I'm just not getting into it further. It's all been looked at.
You won't say? Why
No,
not?
I have nothing else to say about it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of your current fundraising with the Fairness Pact,
Yes.
the DOI report talked about how there wasn't a clear line as to who was vetting the donations to make sure that they were not coming from people who had business before the city or pending business before the city. So what's the process now with your Fairness Pact? Who is vetting those donations to make sure that individuals...
The folks at Fairness Pact can go over all the technicalities with you. We've said very clearly, we do not take donations from folks on the doing business list, which is the obvious, straightforward way of knowing someone's status. The dynamics in the past were different because we're talking about a very different kind of vehicle. But yeah, we can get you that, how that process is being done now.
What do you see as the difference between Campaign for One New York and the Fairness Pact?
One's a political action committee, and the other was a vehicle specifically to achieve certain policy goals. It was all about achieving pre-K for all and the affordable housing plan. It was entirely different entity. Last call, Gloria.
Well, part of what was also in that report was that it said you didn't, you told them you didn't recall whether while you were speaking to the donors, whether or not you told them that them donating or not donating would impact the decision that the city would make on whatever business they had before the city. So did you know they had business before the city, or that they?
Again, I'm just not going further into it. This has been looked at by the appropriate entities. No further action was taken. I have nothing else to say on it. Last call on anything else? Okay, well, is that something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, the report also said that you...
Okay, it's not something else. I'm just going to tell you I have nothing else to say on it.
Because you haven't answered our questions.
As I have nothing else to say on it. That's an answer.
You've never been asked about, so how could you have...
Again,
questions about?
I have given you my answer. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.